Beijing has fired back at Washington's sanctions campaign. And this time, China is not just protesting, it is ordering its companies not to comply. The Chinese Ministry of Commerce has issued a formal blocking order, prohibiting domestic entities from recognizing, enforcing, or complying with recent U.S. sanctions, targeting 5 major Chinese petrochemical firms. The order issued under China's rules on counteracting and justify extraterritorial application of foreign legislation effectively shields these companies from the legal and financial fallout of Washington's economic fury campaign. The U.S. Treasury recently blacklisted the firms for their alleged involvement in the shipment and refining of Iranian petroleum, which currently fuels much of China's independent refining sector. The MOCOM directive creates a legal firewall, making it a violation of Chinese law for any individual or institution within China, including branches of foreign banks, to freeze the assets of these companies or refuse to conduct business with them based on U.S. designations. By formalizing this resistance, China is signaling that its energy security, particularly its reliance on Iranian crude to power its teapot refineries, is non-negotiable if these companies are effectively cut off from the dollar clearing system. Beijing is expected to facilitate their transactions through the cross-border interbank payment system CIPS, using the digital yuan ECNY, further accelerating the de-dollarization of the global oil trade. Beijing has warned that it would take necessary countermeasures against any party that complies with the U.S. sanctions, to the detriment of Chinese national interests, placing multinational corporations and global banks in a difficult dual compliance trap. Has sent a clear message ahead of U.S. President Donald Trump's planned visit to China. If the Strait of Hormuz is still in crisis by the time Air Force One lands in Beijing, it will be on top of the agenda. Speaking to reporters in New York, China's permanent representative to the Kong stressed that while the China-U.S. relationship goes far beyond the current crisis, the continued closure of the world's most vital energy choke point has become an unavoidable priority. Trump is scheduled to meet President Xi Jinping on May 14-15 for a historic summit that was previously delayed by the outbreak of hostilities on February 28. As the world's largest oil importer, with nearly 40% of its crude passing through the strait, China views the restoration of navigation as a matter of urgent national and global interest. The responsibility for reopening the strait lies with both sides, Fu stated, calling for a synchronized de-escalation, where Iran lifts its restrictions and the United States terminates its retaliatory naval blockade. He expressed particular alarm over recent rhetoric from Washington, suggesting the current ceasefire is merely temporary, urging the international community to speak out against a resumption of kinetic operations. He also denied military collaboration of China with Iran in the hostilities which began in February 2026.
So China's view is that we need to open the Strait of Hormuz as quickly as possible. And that actually applies to both sides. Iran needs to lift its restrictions on the Strait of Hormuz, and the U.S. need to lift its naval blockade. Frankly speaking, we are very concerned about some of the remarks we have been hearing recently about this ceasefire being temporary, about the need to initiate another round of attack. I think the international community should be mobilized and raise our voices against the resumption of fighting in that part of the world. I'm sure if the Hormuz is still closed by the time President Trump goes to China, this issue will be high on the agenda of the bilateral talk. And of course, the bilateral relationship between China and the U.S. goes far beyond the issue of Hormuz. And I think it is in the interest of both countries and both peoples. And I may say for the entire world of the people of the entire world, that China and the U.S. maintain steady and sound and sustainable relationship. And yes, in our belief, if the two sides can show mutual respect and can stick to the principle of peaceful coexistence and the win-win cooperation, this bilateral relationship can prosper. And as we often say, that the world is big enough to accommodate both China and the United States. It doesn't have to be a zero-sum game between the two countries. So the two sides, as far as I know, now here in New York, as far as I know, the two sides are making preparations for this historic visit. And we do hope that this visit will materialize. So it is incumbent upon both China and the United States to help maintain the international order and to support the role of the UN. And as the biggest financial contributors of the organization, and there are a lot of commonalities in the positions in how the UN is run. Of course, I also hasten to add that the UN is for all member states. So no big power should adopt this approach that the interest of that big country should be put above the interest of the entire membership. But there are things that we do believe that China and U.S. can work together. There is no military cooperation between China and Iran. And we know that some of the allegations from some of the U.S. officials, they were false. But we are very sympathetic to what the Iranian people are enduring, which actually as I said, the illegitimate war that is imposed on the people, and we do hope that we're trying our best to see to an end to the fighting, and as much as we can. We are supportive of the geographical rotation, and also we also be happy to see a lady SG, female SG. It has been 80 years, and so if we can have the female SG, China will be very happy to see. But you can rest assured, China will continue our support for the UN, will continue to support our brothers and sisters in the global south, and as much as we can, as China grows, the ability of China to help these countries will also grow, and will continue to do that.
The Chinese ambassador's remarks reflect a delicate balancing act for Beijing. China has faced massive supply chain disruptions, though reports suggest some Chinese-linked vessels have been granted passage by Tehran after paying tolls in yuan. China has positioned itself as a decisive arbiter, working through Pakistan to facilitate the original April 8 ceasefire and pushing for a long-term peace framework. While preparations for the Beijing summit remain on track, China has said it expects the U.S. to transition from Operation Epic Fury to a sustainable diplomatic solution. If the blockade persists, the summit will likely pivot from trade and technology towards a high-stakes negotiation over the future of Middle Eastern energy security.